I'm up before the sun today to come and see energy, whatever that is. There's a field around everything, and I'm going to do a separate video about what I think it might be, but something that we're never taught at school or any such thing. And you know, there's all, for me, there's questions about, oh, don't go down to the woods at night. Obviously there's an element of, at some point, predators would have tried to eat us, but there's obviously a long gone, that risk. But yeah, when you do, and the light starts to dim and the sun is not washing everything out and bouncing very fiercely off all the surfaces, you start to see something else going on. And the best way to do this, I can probably, you know, this is probably still an okay time to see it, but really the ideal time is when you've got a little bit of light. So in the evening when the sun is going down, or the morning when the sun is coming up, which is where I am now, or even at night when there's a bit of moon. If you've got too much moon, again, it can be a bit more difficult to see, but you want ideally some sideways lighting and also some fairly dark background, but with stuff in it, some busy stuff like trees, and for instance. So somewhere like this is ideal. And what I'm looking for, which I'm sure is probably not going to be picked up by the camera, because our eyes are really good at seeing things, and the cameras are maybe not quite there yet. But what I'm looking for, so I've got myself a little branch here off this tree, and what I'm looking for is something, start with something pointy. So this is a twig, it's got some buds on it, no leaves, but I'm looking for stuff around the outside of it. So it's very easy for us to just look at solid things because that's what sunlight bounces off, and they're the things we see. And my assumption is that if there's nothing around that that's solid, then I just focus my eyes on the next solid thing, which in this case is grass over there. But if we bring our focus back, if I focus on the twig, for instance, and then just hold that focus and take my gaze beyond the end of the twig and around the side of it, and then move it slightly. So the other thing you can do is to sway from side to side a little bit. And then what we're seeing, what we're looking for, is the interference pattern. So if you've got two things, so if I've got a tree further away and a tree close to me, let's do it like this, tree close to me, tree further away, and I start to sway, then I'll notice this one seems to appear more it moves more sideways than the one behind because it's closer. So it's that whole thing. If I was to do that with a camera, let's have a go with the camera. Okay, so you'll see that what's closer to the camera moves sideways more than what's further away. And I'm just looking for not where the solid things are, but what's going on around the outside. So I'm looking for this. So on your fingers, for instance, the whole same thing goes on around your fingers. And you may have come across some activity at some point where, again, you're trying to look beyond the end of your fingers and look at it, sort of almost looks like an extension of your fingers, but they're not actually fingers, and to move one in relation to the other, and then you start to see this move to that and so on, that they connect in different ways. That might be a little bit beyond to begin with. So start with this. So then the next question is, how do I know it's not just stuff going on in my eyes? And there are things that we have in our eyes, like floaters, and they're very clear, because if you move your head without moving your eyes, then the floaters go with your eyes. Whereas because we're looking at something, for two things further away outside that we know are outside of ourselves, and we see one move against the other, even though I'm not moving my eyes, that's clearly something outside of me. It's not in my eyes. That's something that's outside of my body, and that's what the two things, I'm looking at those two things in relation to each other. So I'll do a little video about what I think this field might be. And I had this question for about the last 20 years. What is that I'm seeing? What's the point of it? Why do I see this? Because obviously I need to see solid things, because if I bump into those, I can fall over, hurt myself. But what is this other thing that's going on? And for now, it's not about what is this thing. The first task for you is to notice it. When you notice it, it's like tuning into a new radio station. Once you've found it, you know it's there and you can find it again. So whilst it's good to have this kind of light to see this field, whatever this field is, first of all, because otherwise the sun is such a bright thing, that light just washes everything out. But when you know it's there, even in daylight, you can see it, because you start focusing on the space around things, and then you notice that it's there, even though it's more difficult to see. So your task is to find somewhere, and of course if it's a little bit brighter, then you just go into a slightly darker space, like under some trees, and you can start looking around leaves, for instance, and then you'll also begin to notice, hopefully, that between things there's a field. So if I've got two twigs here and I move them in relation to each other, I start to see there's this sort of field going on here as I move it. If you've ever been to somewhere where they've roped off a car park and they've just for a temporary space, and you've got tapes and you move the tapes, that's really fun, because it's like you have, if you think bubble mix, so when you blow a bubble, you have a ring, you blow a bubble, that space that the bubble mix, that sort of tension field, if you like, and it's very much like that. If you have bubble mix between these two things or between their twigs, and you move the twigs and you see that, and then once you notice that, then you'll notice, for instance, over here we've got a multi-stemmed coppice shrub, which I think is not hazel. We have multiple stems, and then you'll start to notice in here there is a field of some sort. Let's put you there. There's a field here and there's a field in there, and yeah, we can move things in relation to each other. And you can also put your hand through it, which is when you notice the field, you can see your hand, and then you see the darker it is, the better it is for this. You need a little bit of light, but quite a bit more darkness to make it easy to see. And yeah, it becomes very fascinating, because once you've seen it, it's like, what's that doing there? I was nearly 40 years old before I even noticed this. But once you've seen it, you just can't unsee it. Have fun.